The day was drenched in relentless rain and a chilling wind, yet, despite the harsh weather, Robert strode toward a bank branch with two hefty black bags filled to capacity. As he walked, he listened to his brother's agitated voice on the phone, expressing his discontent with Robert's choice to sell the family home and pour every cent into his latest business venture. Upon reaching the bank's entrance, he pushed the doors open, unfazed by the crowd seeking shelter from the storm. Cutting off his brother mid-sentence, Robert reassured him of his inevitable success. However, his words only fueled his siblings' frustration, leading to an outburst in which he scornfully reminded Robert of his countless failures and labeled him a hopeless loser. In a final, painful declaration, he disowned Robert entirely, severing their familial bond. The cruel words struck deep, filling Robert with regret, yet he found himself unable to argue. As the call ended, his phone slipped limply from his grasp. Since childhood, Robert had been the target of ridicule. Whenever he attempted to skip school, he was swiftly caught and sent back, resulting in poor grades that barred him from higher education. Without a degree, job opportunities remained elusive, leaving him with only one final chance to change his fate. Suddenly, his number was called, directing him to counter 3. Just as he was about to move, something inexplicable occurred. A translucent blue notification box appeared before his eyes, announcing that the new world had fully loaded and that prices had been reduced a millionfold, except for his assets, which remained unchanged. The bizarre message left him stunned. Glancing around, he saw no indication that anyone else had witnessed the same thing. Dismissing it as a figment of his desperate mind, he proceeded to the counter, placing his bags on the table and requesting to deposit money into his account. The bank clerk, Alicia, exhaled in mild frustration as she pulled the bags toward her, expecting them to contain only a small amount of cash. However, the moment she peered inside, her expression shifted to one of shock and disbelief. The sight of the neatly stacked bills made it clear her initial judgment of Robert had been utterly mistaken. With a nervous tremor in her voice, she inquired about the deposit amount. Robert casually responded that he intended to invest $8,000. Alicia's demeanor changed instantly. She hastily grabbed the phone and informed him that she lacked the authority to handle such a transaction. Instead, she would need to contact the bank's headquarters. Within minutes, a sleek white luxury car pulled up outside. Armed personnel swiftly emerged from nearby vehicles, forming a protective circle around a distinguished-looking older man in a tailored suit. Gesturing toward Robert, the man signaled for him to enter the car. Overwhelmed by confusion but too startled to resist, Robert complied. The moment he settled into the vehicle, the convoy sped away. Seated in the lavish limousine, surrounded by heavily armed escorts, Robert felt an unsettling wave of unease. He couldn't grasp why such an elaborate response had been triggered by his simple deposit request. Through the tinted window, he caught sight of a large advertisement promoting an absurdly generous deal: 10 cans of milk for the price of 1. Nearby, an enthusiastic young man excitedly relayed over the phone that he had just earned a 5 fen bonus. The seemingly insignificant amount puzzled Robert. It hardly seemed worth celebrating. The strange circumstances brought his mind back to the digital notification he had seen earlier. What he had initially dismissed as a stress-induced hallucination now seemed alarmingly real. His thoughts were interrupted as a man approached with an amiable smile, introducing himself as a representative of the bank's headquarters. Though wary of the stranger's sudden friendliness, Robert recognized an opportunity to build connections and play along. He asked about the cost of the man's impressive suit, fully expecting an exorbitant figure. Dustin, the bank representative, nonchalantly replied that his outfit was quite affordable, priced at only 2 fen. Robert stared at him in stunned disbelief, waiting for a sign that it was a joke. Yet, the man's composed expression made it clear he was entirely serious. This revelation cemented Robert's growing suspicion. The world around him had undergone an unfathomable transformation. Reeling from the implications, he reached into one of his bags and pulled out a bill. Upon closer inspection, he noticed that the texture of the currency had changed. It was now far sturdier and resistant to tearing. Reality was shifting, and Robert was at its epicenter. Curious about the contents of the banknotes, Robert decided to tear one apart. This action left Jocelyn in utter shock, who couldn't fathom why a wealthy person would destroy such rare and exclusive currency, obtainable only by those of high status. He dismissed it as an eccentricity of the rich. As the car pulled up in front of an architecturally striking high-rise, Robert stepped out, taking in the grand design. Justin, standing beside him, gestured towards the building and informed him that this was the bank's headquarters. Inside, they were greeted by an elegant woman named Louise, who introduced herself as Robert's financial advisor. Acknowledging her beauty and grace, Robert handed her the bags and requested to deposit the money into his account. With a professional nod, she assured him that she would handle everything promptly, proceeding to place the cash into a counting machine while simultaneously filling out the required paperwork. Meanwhile, Robert was escorted to a lavish waiting area. Observing his surroundings cautiously, he couldn't shake the unease creeping over him. He speculated whether this elaborate hospitality was a ploy to earn his trust before eliminating him. The tense silence was broken when Louise entered the room, carrying a cup of coffee for him. Her efficiency caught Robert off guard, but rather than focusing on the drink, he eagerly checked his bank balance. At that precise moment, a notification arrived, informing him that his account balance had reached 664,088 I-85 FEMAM. The revelation stunned Louise, who fumbled the cup, letting it crash onto the table. Justin sprang from his seat in equal disbelief. Shortly after, another message from the bank indicated that an additional $1.5 million had been transferred into a savings account, ensuring that Robert would receive monthly deposits of approximately 12,000 yuans. However, Robert was dissatisfied, considering the amount too small. Louise and Justin could hardly believe what they were hearing. After all, even the wealthiest individual in China held a balance of only 380 million. Realizing they were in the presence of someone truly extraordinary, they simultaneously extended their business cards and bowed, assuring Robert that they would fulfill any request he had. He accepted their cards with a nod of acknowledgement before making his way toward the exit, thanking them, but indicating that it was time for him to leave. Justin and Louise exchanged glances, thrilled to have assisted someone of such immense wealth. Needing a break from the surreal events unfolding around him, Robert decided to visit his girlfriend at the gym. He resolved to push aside his growing suspicions and focus on unwinding. Just as he arrived, a familiar voice called out to him. Turning around, he spotted Angelique, tying her long hair into a ponytail. Seeing her, he gave an encouraging thumbs up. Irritated, Angelique playfully kicked his leg, demanding to know why he was staring at her. However, her annoyance quickly faded when she noticed the weary expression on his face. With a resigned sigh, she asked what was troubling him. She lifted her hand to playfully hit him again, but Robert managed to block the impact with his palms. Crossing her arms in frustration, she complained about an ongoing issue. Recent advertisements for a brand called Beachy were once again being distributed, this time at an outrageous price of 800. To her, it was blatant extortion. Smirking slightly, Robert remarked that until she fully adapted to adult life, disappointments like these would keep coming. Believing that his newfound wealth could solve any problem, he stepped closer and offered to help. Amused, Angelique chuckled and dismissed the idea, reminding him that he was still poorer than her before casually heading for the exit. Her rejection didn't deter Robert. He owed her far too much to stand idly by. After all, it was Angelique who had stopped him from making a fatal mistake when his last business venture collapsed. He had been on the verge of jumping off a bridge when she intervened, offering him a place to stay and asking nothing in return. Her kindness had given him a second chance, and now he was determined to repay that debt. A short while later, they left the gym together and headed to a boutique. Angelique needed an elegant dress for an upcoming event and planned to rent one. As they entered, a stylish saleswoman guided them toward a selection of outfits she believed would suit Angelique perfectly. Robert scanned the collection and noted that the prices were far from modest. If Angelique was willing to rent such an expensive gown, then the occasion must be significant. Their attention was suddenly drawn to a voice calling out Angelique's name. Turning simultaneously, they saw Olivia approaching with a man by her side. The moment Angelique recognized her former classmate, her demeanor subtly shifted. Robert immediately picked up on the change in her mood. Meanwhile, Olivia, with a smug smile, introduced Angelique to her companion, explaining that they had once been classmates. She then smugly remarked that Angelique had foolishly rejected a wealthy heir back in the day, a decision she clearly found amusing. Without taking her eyes off Angelica, Paul smiled maliciously and decided to kiss his new girlfriend. This provoked Olivia to ask her old friend if she really had to go to Jana's birthday party and that if she had no money, there was no point in trying to pretend to be someone. Bending down to pick up clothes to rent, her words irritated Angelica. When she was about to respond to the barbs directed at her, Robert stepped forward and said that, unlike some, Angela was very beautiful and would look good in any clothes. In response to this, Olivia, pointing to the guy, replied with displeasure that people like him belonged on the farm and that he should stay quietly on the sidelines. Then she turned her attention back to Angela, asking how much longer she would pretend to be someone she was not, as it was time to accept her position and not appear in front of others again. Seeing how much her face was twisted in dissatisfaction, Olivia smiled smugly, saying she came here to buy clothes and not to rent them like some people. To the surprise and perplexity of our heroes, immediately after these words, Paul pushed the girl next to him aside, saying she was very cruel. Without taking his eyes off Angelica, which wasn't a good sign, he said he had a lot of money and could lend some, allowing Angelica to buy any clothes here. Angelica recoiled involuntarily at that moment. Olivia clung to him, saying a bit dissatisfied that she was against it because he had already promised to buy clothes for her and that he didn't know anything about Angelica's tastes. Our heroes watched the couple's argument in perplexity. Sighing in disappointment, Angelique took Robert's hand and said she was fed up, so they were leaving. But the hero stopped her, asking her to wait. Then he approached a consultant nearby and asked if the two had already bought anything, to which the girl replied negatively. Robert nodded, satisfied, and said he would buy everything in this store, pointing to the couple in front of them, asking that nothing more be sold to them here. His words brought a stunned expression to the faces of Paul and Olivia, but it quickly passed. Olivia laughed loudly and asked if Robert was in a position to play the hero and if he knew how much it would cost to buy everything in this store. The hero smiled and took out his wallet, replying that she was right, he had no idea. Opening the wallet, he took out a 5 UN note saying that these trifles didn't bother him at all. Seeing the content of the wallet, Paul was horrified, deciding involuntarily that Robert had robbed a bank because an ordinary person could never get such a large amount. Meanwhile, the hero handed one of the notes to the consultant and asked if it was enough to buy all the clothes. She, looking at the extended money, hesitantly replied that it was too much. Olivia and Paul tried to figure out if this was a prank and where Angelique found this guy. Robert, paying no attention to anyone, smiled satisfactorily at his surprised friend and said that since the problem with her clothes was solved, they could now go eat something somewhere. Seeing such a scene, the opposite couple had a nosebleed. Suddenly, a dark-haired girl entered the room, accompanied by 2 guards, introducing herself as Anna, saying she was the owner of this store. She didn't expect that sir as soon as she managed to get back from Justin. Hearing the familiar name, our hero was cautious as he didn't expect that old man to act so quickly. Still addressing Anna, he suggested they go upstairs and discuss everything, deciding that with this conversation, he could learn more about her cases and Justin's. He agreed with her proposal. As soon as Anna received the response, she turned to look at the other couple and asked if the two were his friends. An enthusiastic Paul replied that they were very close friends. Olivia also decided to join the game and, shaking Angela's hand, said she and Robert's girlfriend were best friends. She decided to take this good opportunity to get closer to the owner of this store. A little surprised, Anna asked if they were classmates. Angelica, trying to pull her hand away, wanted to respond that it wasn't so, but Olivia interrupted her and, moving a little closer, told her not to be shy. When Anna believed her words, Olivia smiled triumphantly. Meanwhile, Anna turned to her employee and asked her to prepare 5 premium clothing cards with a 30% discount and 2 of her business cards. Evaluating the expression on Angelica's face, she realized that the relationship between the girls was far from close, but she decided that she should first win Robert's favor and only then take care of everything else. Olivia was pleased that everything went so well, and now she was one step closer to a happy future. However, in the next moment, not everything went according to her plan. A dissatisfied Robert stepped forward and said that if Anna wanted to meet those two, she could, but he refused to participate in it and didn't want them to use his name so shamelessly. Then he grabbed Angelica's hand and headed for the exit, leaving at the end that poor people like them were not worthy of meeting noble people like Olivia. To get details about what was happening, he advised Anna to contact her employee. She immediately approached her boss and told him the situation. Anna's face instantly twisted in dissatisfaction. Reaching our heroes, she blocked their way, apologizing for all the inconvenience and asking them not to leave so quickly. Then she turned and ordered the guards to expel the two. Dissatisfied with what was happening, Olivia and Paul began to protest as they were grabbed by the neck. Ignoring their words, the guards, as ordered, expelled the couple. Anna didn't stop there and told Maria that from today, they were ending cooperation with those people and also asked her to tell them to leave the complex as soon as possible. Having resolved this, Anna looked at Robert, pointing to the stairs, suggesting they talk in a calmer environment. The hero agreed and followed her. Later, everyone was sitting at the table with aromatic tea. Anna praised Angelica's wonderful figure and appearance, saying she had never seen such a person, even though she had been in the sewing business for many years. The girl sitting in front of her lowered her head and modestly replied that Anna was exaggerating too much. Robert asked Anna to help them choose several suitable clothes for his companion. Anna called Maria and said they were true professionals in this matter. The consultant approached Angelica and asked her to follow without looking in their direction. Robert observed that Anna understands everything quickly and knows how to approach a person. The girls quickly dived into the process of selecting clothes, and time slowly approached nightfall. The fitting only ended after a few hours when the first stars began to appear in the sky. Anna thanked Robert for visiting her store and handed him a VIP membership card that already had 5 yawns on it, and also informed him that it could be used in other stores as well. The hero accepted the card and thanked the girl. Then he and Angelica left the store. Noticing that his friend was lost in thought, he stopped in front of her, waving his hand and asking what she was thinking about. Angelica trembled in surprise and asked if all this was true, to which Robert, with a smile on his face, asked what she thought about it. Dissatisfied at being deceived all this time, the girl again advanced against the hero with her fists. She asked how he managed to deceive her all this time and pretend to be poor for months. A few minutes later, after unleashing all her anger on him, she sighed and asked disdainfully if he was now happy for having deceived her. Robert then guiltily responded that recently he really didn't have money. He was just lucky to invest successfully and hit the jackpot. Not believing his justification at all, Angelica grabbed the guy by the shirt and asked how some investments could make Anna bow, and how he could do this to her all this time, conspiring behind her back and hiding his condition, considering her a complete idiot. This would have continued for a long time if Anna's phone hadn't rung suddenly. The girl immediately released Robert, answering the call and excitedly asked what had happened. The news she heard didn't make her happy. Her friend was in trouble. After hearing the details, Angelica was perplexed and horrified. About 20 minutes later, the taxi stopped in front of the famous restaurant. The car barely had time to stop when the passenger door opened and Angelica jumped out and, completely unable to hear Robert's shouts behind her, ran towards the entrance. Our hero had no choice but to follow her. He knew that Sophia was Angelica's best friend, so he understood the girl's reaction but also knew that her haste wouldn't lead to anything good. Meanwhile, Angelica had already reached the doors and ran down the hall, where she was suddenly grabbed by 2 girls. She recognized them and enthusiastically asked where her friend was. They smiled and said there was something more important than Sophia now. Thus, the girls went to the tables. Seeing her classmate, Catherine greeted Angelica, saying they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The girls who brought Angelica there sat at the table, ignoring her questions about Sophia and saying they hadn't seen each other for a long time, so they made up a reason to invite her there. Pointing behind the girl, they asked who the handsome guy behind her was and if he was her boyfriend. Angelica was embarrassed by such a question and only now remembered that she didn't come here alone. But Robert, unlike her, wasn't perplexed and, smiling, replied that he was indeed her boyfriend. He then asked if he could join them, to which Catherine responded affirmatively. Sitting at the table, the hero couldn't help but notice the large number of dishes on the table. For some reason, he had a bad feeling about the girls' words that they just wanted to talk to Angelica. During this time, Catherine did not take her interested gaze off him, resting her head in her hands and asking how he managed to court Angelica, suggesting he must be very rich. He smiled slightly and replied that it was obvious. From the first minutes, he realized they simply wanted to deceive them and wouldn't believe it, so he asked if they had eaten enough and asked his friend if she wanted to change places. Catherine laughed ironically, saying they had just sat down and couldn't leave so quickly. She wouldn't let the couple go so easily, at least not until Angelica paid for the table. Contrary to their expectations, Angelica told Robert she hadn't eaten anything here so they could leave. Veronica intervened, asking mournfully how she could leave without even trying the bread. Realizing they couldn't leave so easily, Robert sighed and, calling a server passing by, asked him to bring a menu. Veronica and Zemia exchanged mocking looks, happy that he had fallen into the trap so quickly. Completely unaware of his gaze, our heroes discussed the local menu. Taking advantage of the moment, Catherine discreetly called her brother and said that she and the girls had come to eat at the restaurant. Then she turned to Robert and Angelica, asking if they minded if she left for a while, to which he mockingly replied that he didn't mind, especially because someone was also calling other people. With his approval, the three girls left the table, actively talking on the phone about something, while Catherine wished the remaining heroes not to get bored without them. Half an hour later, all the acquaintances the girls had invited arrived and made a real banquet. Robert got up from the table and asked Angelica to wait for him there while he paid the bill. Catherine nodded and said she would take care of Angelica during that time. While the hero was heading to the cash register, the girls quietly talked among themselves, discussing the third table, which had ordered only the most expensive dishes. The conversation was interrupted by Robert's approach. Counting all the dishes on the three tables, the girl reported that the total was 1 femme and 3 L200. Taking a card out of his wallet, Robert asked how much it would cost for all the tables in the hall. The girl replied that besides their 3 tables, there were 15 tables in the hall, and the whole hall totaled 4 fen and 3 li. She didn't understand why he asked about the other tables as well. In the next moment, touching the card to the terminal, Robert said he would pay for the other tables as well. He also added that he would give them a tip of 5 fen. Hearing such a large tip, the restaurant administrators were very shocked, but they quickly regained their composure and bowed, almost hitting their heads on the table surface, thanking him for such a favor. When the loudspeaker announced to the guests that Mr. Robert had paid for that night's dinner and that the restaurant would offer a free dessert to the guests, Angelica, Catherine, and the other girls were very surprised. Catherine didn't expect him to really pay for everything. Frustrated, she frowned in disgust, thinking enviously about where Angelica managed to get such a guy. Meanwhile, Robert had already returned to his friend and, helping her up, said it was now time to take care of other matters. She was pleasantly surprised that he decided not to be stingy, but to pay for everyone. Watching the two head for the exit, Catherine continued to burn with envy. When a waiter she already knew passed by her, she called him and asked him to come closer. In just a moment, a new plan had already matured in her mind about how not to let Angelica go unpunished. Looking at the waiter again, she said that Robert Shen had spent a lot of her money today and asked him to return it. In response, the man smiled and said they do not issue refunds. He also said that Mr. Robert did not pay for her tables, and before leaving, he asked her to pass a question to him. Who allowed her to despise people? In the next moment, 2 belligerent guards appeared behind the waiter, and he said that if Catherine refused to pay, they would be forced to act. After giving the amount of 1 femme and 3 L2, he asked how she would pay, in cash or by card. Meanwhile, Angelica, who had left, sighed and said that in the future they would skin her 3 times over, which caused misunderstanding in Robert, who asked why she thought so since they were friends before. And we'll see it in the next episode. Remember to subscribe and leave a like.